Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our Strong Foundations Implementation webinar, where we're going to try to do a deep dive on this decision point and hopefully answer your questions. I am going to begin sharing my screen. The webinar will be recorded and we will post it on the LASO website later on this afternoon so that if you need to reference anything, you will have access to that information. Okay, so we're going to do just a quick round of introductions so you all will know those of us who will be speaking this morning. My name is Shay Wise Garland, and I am the Director of High Quality Instructional Materials Scale Strategy. And so I get to work a lot with vendors and ESCs on how we continue to grow access to high quality materials across the state. And I will turn it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Valerie Johnson. I'm the Director of High Quality Instructional Materials Implementation, and I lead a team in building out the professional learning that we roll out as part of our implementation supports.
And my name is Megan Rios, and I'm the HQIM Print Operations Manager.
And you will notice that we have left the Strong Foundations at TEA email address up so that if you have questions, if you would direct them to that email instead of to our personal emails, it will help us to respond in a little bit more timely manner. So a few FYIs and agenda for today. We've already done kind of our welcome and introductions. We do want to give a brief overview of the LASO grant in case you are new to this opportunity. And then we want to spend the majority of our time doing a deep dive over Strong Foundations implementation, which includes the program description, eligibility, some of the key components, scoring, the interview criteria, and then of course, any allowable expenditures. And we hope to, of course, leave some time for some Q&A. You do have a Q&A button and you are welcome to type into the chat. And while I'm speaking, my colleagues can answer questions that we are able to. If there are questions that maybe require a more detailed response, we may not be able to answer those immediately, but they would be posted on our FAQ, which we hope to get up next week. Again, everything will be posted on the LASO website, and I apologize, it'll be by the end of this week, not the end of the day. So just know that if you are looking for that information, maybe toward the end of the week, you will have access to it. But again, please use the Q&A box if you have questions as we are going through the presentation. So just a quick overview of the Learning Acceleration Support Opportunities Grant, also known as LASO. This is really an opportunity for districts to use a one application system to apply for funding that we hope will be a streamlined opportunity so that they are not completing multiple grant applications at one time with competing deadlines and different requirements. And so this single application allows them opportunity to access roughly $110 million in services and supports that cover 8 different initiatives that will address learning acceleration and innovation. But again, that is completed through a one application system, similar to what we did with the T-Class initiative. So as you can see in this graphic, we've certainly made some progress from some of the losses we experienced as a result of the pandemic, but there's still some ground to be made up as we think about student outcomes. And so one of the things that we are hoping to achieve with our LASO Strong Foundations Implementation Grant is to be able to accelerate learning. And you can see we've certainly made some progress. In reading language arts, we have a bit of a way to go in math, but we are certainly hopeful that some of the opportunities you have access to through the grant will allow districts to accelerate learning for those students so that we can continue to see growth among students. So this LASO cycle will be anchored in our learning acceleration strategies, and you can see all of them listed here. The ones that we will specifically be focusing on with this cycle of LASO are instructional materials, which is making sure that teachers and students have access to rigorous, high quality instructional materials that are designed to make up ground and master grade level TEKS. more time, so allowing more time for students most in need, including expanded instructional models and time in the summer with targeted tutoring. And then, of course, our innovative school models, which the innovative school models incorporates all of the learning acceleration framework opportunities. And so those three that are in the dark orangish pink color, those are the ones that we are really focused in on for this cycle of the LASO grant. So for today's discussion, we'll really be looking at one of the 8 initiatives, which is our Strong Foundations Implementation Supports, which essentially means that a district is ready to implement in the 23-24 school year. And the focus for this implementation will be K-5 reading, language arts, and math implementation of high quality instructional material supports. And so you can see we've made it green to kind of emphasize the purpose of today's webinar. The other decision points have different webinars that will specifically dive into those components, but the focus of this one will just be on the implementation supports, which fall under the instructional materials initiative. So a quick reminder on timeline for the LASO grant. You can see kind of the "you are here" icon there. We are conducting the program webinars now. The application window is currently open and will remain open until December 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Obviously, you can see that there are some things that will happen after the application closes in regards to the scoring of applications, vetting, any interviews that may need to take place. And then, of course, we hope to be able to make an announcement early in February as to who has been awarded the grants. And then, of course, ideally, we'll be able to issue NOGAs very early in the spring at some point between mid-February and mid-April. Again, this timeline is just for your reference. It is the same timeline that we've used in all of our previous LASO webinars, but just wanted to remind you that we are currently in really the 3rd phase of this work, where we are going into more detail about program-specific opportunities. So keep in mind, for those of you who may be thinking about that December 22nd deadline to submit your application, and that is potentially when most of you have already begun your holiday break at the district level. If for some reason you require a CAO or superintendent signature that you are unable to get, you can certainly email us and let us know that so that we can work with you on that. But keep in mind, your superintendent should have received a link to the application. If for some reason they did not receive the link, you can reach out to our team, or we will post in the chat a form link that you can use to access the application. But remember that unique ID would have been emailed out last Monday. So if you are searching through your email, that would be the best place to look. We've also posted a PDF of the application last Monday. So if you would like to look at the application in detail in a PDF version before you access it through Qualtrics, you would have that option as well. Okay, one other thing that we did just want to remind you of as it relates to change requests and declines. We do know that with T-Class, we did have districts who requested changes or wanted to decline awards after being awarded certain grant opportunities. However, with T-Class, there was a lot of funding. Much of that was ESSER funding. We were on a very condensed timeline for that. So we did allow a lot of declines and changes to those awards. However, because we are in a different phase now with the LASO cycle, we're no longer operating with those unique circumstances, and we would like to go back to our traditional procedures whereby we do not allow as many of those changes and declines in awards. So we're hoping that providing these webinar opportunities and office hours, we're able to kind of mitigate any of those last minute changes or decline of awards so that we can ensure that we are awarding funds to districts who are able to meet the assurances and follow through with the grant. Will be anchored in the informal discretionary competitive grant process. So that means that we do not advise districts to decline or change requests after they have been awarded. And if a decline is requested, they will be considered on a case-by-case basis, and it could raise the LEA's federal grant risk level in the coming year. So just some things to keep in mind that we have now transitioned back to our normal decline and change procedures for grants. So that was a lot of just general housekeeping information, reminders about the LASO grant in general. So now we are going to transition into kind of that second part of our agenda, which is the deep dive on information very specific to our Strong Foundations Implementation Supports Grant. So this is just a quick high-level overview of what we hope to be able to provide across the state with this grant opportunity. Again, this is focused on the initiative related to instructional materials and that rigorous, high-quality access to materials that's TEKS aligned and will hopefully accelerate learning. So we have an estimated total funding amount of about $60 million. All of these awards will be in kind, meaning there will not be direct funds given to districts. These will be supports provided directly from TEA or vendors that TEA contracts with. So districts will not receive direct funds in this particular grant. The estimated award numbers will obviously vary depending on LEA size, but we anticipate hoping to award somewhere between 75 and 175 LEAs. And the estimated timeline, just again, naming that this decision point would specifically be for LEAs who would be ready to implement materials for K-5 math or RLA in school year 23-24. So a quick program description, just to answer the question of, so what is the LASO Strong Foundations Implementation Grant? Kind of what is the purpose behind it? And what we're really hoping this grant opportunity does is allows access to high quality instructional materials, because we know that that's one of the most impactful things that can help us to accelerate learning and make some changes on that graph that we shared earlier with some of the ground that we need to make up as it relates to our reading, language arts, and math instruction and student outcomes. It also ensures that we are meeting Texas standards and that we are supporting teachers by providing them with access to these materials that are both rigorous and grade level content. The implementation supports include pre-implementation support. So even prior to implementing materials, ensuring that the right systems, structures, and supports are created at hopefully the district and campus level to ensure a successful implementation, as well as making sure we have both content and product-specific trainings that support not only teachers, coaches, but also our administrators so that they can strengthen their implementation of the math or reading language arts materials. You'll see a note at the bottom about the Strong Foundations Grant Program, which is tied to legislation. You can see the education code there. So this is specifically why we are focused very heavily on K-5 math and reading language arts for this grant opportunity. But that information is just there for your reference so that you can better understand the tie to the Strong Foundations legislation. So in order to be eligible for the Strong Foundations Implementation Grant, you would be implementing K-5 RLA and or K-5 math materials in school year 23-24. And you can see our TEA available materials listed there as Amplify, our elementary literacy program, Amplify Texas, our LASO Escritura en Español, which is our Spanish language arts elementary program, and then our Eureka Math TEKS Edition program. So if LEAs are not yet ready to implement in 23-24, we would encourage them to apply for our Strong Foundations Planning Grant so that they can take a year to plan and prepare themselves to implement materials in subsequent years. So with our Strong Foundations Implementation Program, options, we have really 3 different models to support the implementation of these materials. The first model, which you may be familiar with, is our CRIMSI model, in which we provide professional learning directly to teachers and coaches and administrators through our asynchronous modules and our live virtual communities of practice. This is something that we have used through our other T-class grant opportunity, and many districts are familiar with it, but we have the CRIMSI model as one of the options for the delivery of in-kind supports. The second option is a slightly newer model, but it is our CRIMSI local implementation training of trainers module. And so in this particular module, it is very similar to CRIMSI, but instead of directly training teachers, we would be training the coaches and administrators who would then turn around and train their own teachers within their district setting. So when we think about that model, it's really more about scaling that work so that the smaller group works directly with TEA, and then they're able to take that information and share it more broadly across the district. Finally, our third option for implementation program supports is our ESC Strong Foundations model, in which we have our ESCs who are currently becoming certified as product advisors, who will then be able to provide professional learning directly to teachers, coaches, and administrators through not only the asynchronous modules and the live virtual communities of practice, but they can also provide job embedded coaching supports that would be delivered by their specialists. So 3 different models in which we intend to deliver those in-kind services. Again, these will not be options that you would be partnering with a vendor of your choice. These would be options that you would be awarded based on your application information you've submitted and our capacity constraints. But these are the 3 models that are involved in the implementation program. So all 3 of the options that I just voiced over include the pre-implementation supports for the districts in order to prepare for that high level of implementation support across the district and of course campus level. So we really want to make sure that we have set districts up for success. We also want to name that all of the options include both the content and product specific training and onboarding for teachers, coaches, and administrators. And then finally, they all involve communities of practice for senior district leaders. And senior district leaders could be defined as superintendent, CAOs, or CSOs. Additionally, options 1A and 1B, which should be the CRIMSI and the CRIMSI local TOT model, would include stipends for teachers who meet all of the requirements that is in the 1A model. So the CRIMSI model, that's directly from TEA. The CRIMSI TOT model, there would be stipends for coaches meeting all of the requirements in both 1A and 1B. 1A also includes print materials for teachers and students for the full year, including the manipulatives and trade books that may be involved in those K-5 materials. So again, options 1A and 1B include stipends. Option 1A includes print materials. Just want to call out here that this is definitely something that you want to be clear on as you're thinking about your implementation and whether or not your district is ready to implement. So we are hoping that this chart here really outlines the differences in the 3 models. So you can see kind of the goldenrod yellow is our CRIMSI model. Again, that's the direct support from TEA to teachers, coaches, and administrators. And you can see what is included and what's not included. In the middle, we have our CRIMSI local implementation TOT model, and you can see what's included, what's not included there. And then of course, on the far right in blue, we have our ESC model. We do recognize that you will likely want to spend some time looking at this chart so that you can make a good decision for which of these models may be best for your district's local context. And I am going to turn it over to my colleague Val to discuss some of the commitments.
Great. So districts applying to Strong Foundations implementation will, as part of the application process, agree to a set of assurances. These include approval by the superintendent and CAO or equivalent leader and the school board if required by local policy. The appointment of initiative lead as the primary point of contact and submission of at least one additional point of contact. And the initiative lead really serves as the overall district contact for the program. We also require the participation of at least one school leader per participating campus. We highly recommend that principals serve in that role, but other school leaders can serve in that role as well. We also require the participation of at least one coach per product. And when we say coach, this can include instructional coaches, administrators, leaders, or any other individuals directly supporting teachers. For example, if a district is participating in both Amplify and Eureka supports, they would need to provide one coach for Amplify or more, and one coach for Eureka or more. We'll also require the submission of participant registration information by the deadlines, which will be this spring. Additionally, commitments include following the year-long scope and sequence for each product, meeting the minimum number of instructional minutes for each product, using the curriculum embedded assessments for each product, ensuring that participants are able to attend all required professional learning, and that teachers have sufficient planning time and use the required protocols. It also ensures digital access and rostering if applicable to the product, as well as print access. And as a reminder, print is available through option 1A, CRMSI, but it's not included in 1B and 1C. So districts would need to commit to ensuring that they order sufficient print materials for all teachers and students participating in those options. Finally, districts ensure all participating initiative leads, school leaders, coaches, and teachers complete their own role-specific assurances, which include things like making sure that they do attend all of their professional learning and complete their exit tickets, for example. It also requires attendance and engagement by senior district leaders at monthly communities of practice. So these would be superintendents, CAOs, CSOs, etc. Need to have at least one person attending each of the monthly COPs, and then finally submitting required data. In terms of scoring and prioritization, so scores will be based on STAR scores from the previous year. So if you're applying for supports in Amplify, we'll be ranking districts based on third grade literacy STAR scores from lowest to highest. And if you're applying for Eureka, we'll be doing the same for the third grade math STAR scores from lowest to highest. When possible, we'll award districts their preferred option. However, each option does have capacity limitations and districts might not receive their preferred option. So for example, if a district applies for 1A, 1B, and 1C in that order of preference, we will try to get 1A as their award option, but if capacity fills up, then we would move on to the next preference and the next preference after that. Districts who have previously participated and are in good standing in the Resilient Schools Support Program, or RSSP, the Strong Foundations Math and Literacy Framework Development Grant, either Cohort 1 or Cohort 2, or the CRMSI Full Year 21-22 or 22-23 pilots will be prioritized. One note on current CRMSI districts is if they're applying to expand, assuming we don't have capacity for the other options, they will be awarded the CRMSI Local Implementation Option 1B, which really focuses on building that internal capacity for districts to then run that with their own teachers. In the case of a tie, we will conduct virtual oral interviews that are based on overall readiness for implementation, looking at things like systems alignment, as well as support models. In terms of allowability versus non-allowability of funds, all Strong Foundations implementation supports are actually in-kind supports, as Shay mentioned earlier. So no grant funds will be directly provided to districts. For the timeline, we'll actually kick off this spring with a set of pre-implementation system and school level supports launched tentatively in March. So we'll be very quick start. We'll then have onboarding modules that need to be completed prior to implementation for teachers, coaches, school leaders, and district leaders that will launch in the spring and continue in the summer. And then during the fall and the spring, we'll have ongoing professional learning for teachers, instructional coaches, school leaders, and district leaders, as well as progress monitoring supports and cycles of continuous improvement. And we'll provide a more detailed information in early December. Now for a quick application walkthrough for the Strong Foundations Implementation Grant. So as you can see here, you'll start by selecting which product or products you're interested in. So the K-5 RLA approved product or the K-5 math approved product or both. And then you'll select your preferences among 1A, 1B, and 1C. If you're not interested in one of those options, you should select not interested in. Again, we'll work to award districts their preferred option when possible, but there may be capacity limitations and districts may not receive their preferred options. So we encourage districts to select all options that they are interested in as possible. After you enter that information, you'll then be entering the number of schools that you want to participate in the implementation supports, as well as the number of individual teachers. And one note here is that teachers who previously piloted the product are not eligible for this grant and should not be included in the counts. Instead, they'll be continuing to receive support from their current vendor or through currency. You'll also enter the number of individual coaches. And as a reminder, districts must have at least one coach per product. One flag, if you get an error message on these questions, please email laso@teatexas.gov to get a new link.
Great, thanks. I'm going to walk through the print information section of the survey, which are going to be questions 27 and 31, and we have screenshots of those here on the slide. There are a few items I want to call out. The first being that because of continued supply chain challenges and the required turnaround time for printing, if you are awarded option 1A CRMSI, we will be basing your print orders off of whatever's entered into this section. There will be limited changes from these, so please work with your teams to ensure that these are accurate, since these are going to be the numbers that we will be sharing with the publisher for your school district's specific order. Next, I'd like to talk through some of the formatting. So here you see rows for each grade level and columns for your teacher and student numbers. The columns are grouped by language. So the first two are English only implementation, then Spanish only, and then bilingual. And the final two rows, the bilingual classrooms, if you were to be awarded these materials, you would be getting a copy of printed materials in both Spanish and English. So regardless of implementation model, if a classroom requires materials in both languages, they are considered bilingual, and you should be inputting those numbers in those last two columns. If you input numbers in the Spanish only column in the center, you will not be getting any materials in English. Next, I want to flag that teacher print numbers must equal teacher implementation numbers for option 1A CRMSI. So let's say in question 25, you are inputting 10 teachers for grades K2 for Amplify, then your total print numbers across grades K2 cannot surpass 10 teachers. If they do, you'll get an error message and you won't be able to proceed. So thinking about it as the number of teachers implementing Amplify is the number of teachers I need to order print for. Next, regarding student numbers, please consider self-contained versus departmentalized in your teacher to student ratios. And you're also inputting numbers for next year's classroom. So for example, consider your current enrollment of 4th graders for next year's 5th grade classrooms. Next, for Eureka Math, you'll only order one manipulative kit per teacher. So in the first row, if I had one teacher in an English classroom, one in a Spanish only classroom, and one in a bilingual classroom, I would enter a total of 3 manipulative kits for that grade level. So for the bilingual classrooms, while you're getting print materials in both English and Spanish, you're only getting one manipulative kit because they're the same regardless of language. There's not a manipulative kit in the amplified curriculum, so you won't see that column there. And then, so coaches will not receive print materials. And lastly, please don't leave any of the boxes empty. So you're going to enter zeros in the boxes with no teacher or students. And if you don't, you'll get an error message, so you won't be able to move forward. So that's it for me. I'll pass it back to you all.
Finally, you'll enter the number of senior district leaders that would participate in the monthly communities of practice. Again, this might include superintendents, chief academic officers, chief school officers, or equivalent roles. You'll need at least one representative at each community of practice, but if you would, for example, like all three of those roles to attend, you should put 3, and then in some cases, they may swap in and out on who's attending each month. Finally, official submission of this application requires the superintendent's signature, and in the rare case that the superintendent is unable to sign, email laso@teatexas.gov. For more information, we'll be hosting a set of office hours. The first set of office hours will be specifically focused on technical support and high-level guidance. For example, how to access and submit the Qualtrics application, looking at dates, timelines, and estimated funding, etc. This will take place on November 29th from 2 to 3 p.m. We'll also be hosting option-specific webinars and office hours. We'll be posting these registration links on the LASO website by the end of the week, and we'll also record each session and each office hours to post as well, in case districts are unable to attend. As you can see there, we have a webinar and 2 sets of office hours for each of the options, CREMSI local implementation, and ESC Strong Foundations implementation supports. So if you want to learn more about one or multiple options, we highly encourage you to attend these deep dives. We'll also be offering additional topic-specific office hours. Again, we'll post registration links by end of week, and we'll record these sessions as well. These include office hours on the approved core products. So we have that split out by our Amplified Texas Elementary Literacy Program for K2 and for 3-5, as well as our bilingual dual language program and our math program. We'll also have webinars and office hours specific to print materials to learn more about professional development. So looking at the scope and sequence, for example, as well as going through the assurances. Again, if you have any questions, please email the Strong Foundations inbox, strongfoundations@teatexas.gov, if there are questions specific to the options. If it's questions about the more general LASO process, email laso@teatexas.gov. Make sure that you're looking at the LASO webpage and preparing your questions for office hours. And we'll be updating the FAQs by Tuesday, November 22nd with additional answers to questions. And finally, again, we have the office hours on November 29th from 2 to 3 p.m., as well as the other webinars and office hours that we'll be posting registration links to by end of week. And now we will look at the Q&A that's been coming in. We've been able to answer some of them offline, but now we can go through some of the other ones that have not been answered, and please feel free to continue dropping questions into the Q&A. So I'm just going to go down the list here. So if a campus has already started using the HQIM this school year, can they still be eligible for this grant? The answer to that is yes. However, it will need to be new teachers who have not previously participated in CREMSI, for example. So if a district does have teachers who participated in CREMSI, they'll continue to receive supports into the next school year focused on year 2 of implementation. But if not all of the teachers participated, the new teachers in the district could be part of this grant. For year 1 versus year 2 of implementation, it can be either. The professional development will specifically be focusing on year 1, but we know we have many districts who have a subset of schools participating in year 1, who again will then be receiving year 2 supports through CRMSI, or their state approved vendor is also a 2-year program. And so districts can be either in year 1 or year 2 of implementation, but the professional development will be focused on year 1 teachers. In terms of hours of training for asynchronous and live virtual, we'll be sharing more specifics about that in the webinars on the week after Thanksgiving. So make sure to attend that, and we'll be going over both the number of hours as well as the high-level scope and sequence. Excuse me.
Val, I'll jump in. So the next question is, we only get materials in 1A, but 1C would allow us to receive supports from our ESCs as we did in T-class. Is that correct? So if I'm reading the question correctly, yes, the print materials are only available if you are choosing 1A as the CRMSI option. However, if your district already has materials, you may choose 1C, or your district could purchase their own materials or print their own materials. And 1C would allow you to get that direct hands-on support from your local regional education service center. The next question: can districts still get print materials using other funds if we partner with an ESC? The answer is, if those other funds are referring to district local funds, then absolutely. We currently do not have another Strong Foundations or LASO grant opportunity that specifically provides funding for print materials. Again, you would have to choose either the CRMSI model and be awarded that implementation support to get print materials, or you would have to use local funds to purchase those materials or print them at cost. The next question, Megan, this might be for you. Oh, wait, maybe not. What would you put in the number of print materials if your district already has these materials through T-class? Megan, do you want to give them specific guidance as to how they should handle that?
Yeah, if you don't need print materials, you would just put zeros across the board, and you can't leave it blank, so you would need to put in zeros.
And I do think that this is a good opportunity to explain for those who are involved in the T-class Decision 2A supports, that is a 2-year cycle. So those supports actually go through the 23-24 school year, which is the same time that the LASO Strong Foundations Implementation Support Grant covers. So if they are currently being served by a state-approved vendor or ESC for T-class Decision 2A for Amplify, K5, or Eureka implementation, they would not need to apply to Strong Foundations implementation if they've already been receiving that support, because they would continue to have another year of support through the T-class grant opportunity. So in that instance, we would encourage you to go with your ESC implementation model. If you already have your print materials, you likely would not need to choose the CRMSI model unless you specifically wanted to maybe try the local implementation model if you've previously participated in CRMSI before. We have a question: can an LEA apply for both the planning and implementation grants? If so, how would that LEA be prioritized? Would they be prioritized the same as an LEA that is in cohort 1 or 2 currently? That is multiple questions, David. And so the first answer is they can apply to both the planning and implementation grants, especially considering they may be planning for one content area and implementing in a different content area. As far as prioritization, we would still use our same formula. And when we do our Strong Foundations planning webinar, we'll go over how we're prioritizing those applications, but we would still look at those 3rd grade STAR scores. And then if they've been involved in other grant opportunities, we would look at that as well. And The third question, would they be prioritized the same as an LEA that is in cohort 1 or 2 currently? It depends on what they are involved in and what they are applying for as far as which of the different implementation support models. So we may need to get a little bit more insight from you, David, if there's a specific use case that you're referring to, or you're welcome to join our office hours. But we will try our best to compile a more detailed response on our FAQ document. Can we apply for 1A, 1B, and 1C? The answer is correct. Could we be awarded all 3 if we apply for all 3? You would not be awarded all 3 because you would only be implementing at most 2 different resources, either Amplify K5 or Eureka K5. But we will certainly work with the district to help make the decision about which of those 3 models is best. And I see Val has been able to rejoin us. So I don't know if you wanted to add any additional information about potentially being awarded all 3 options if the district is willing to engage in any of the 3 different models.
Thanks, Shay. So a district could be awarded both 1A and 1B for different products. However, they would not be awarded all 3. So for example, if a district is currently in CRMSI implementing the RLA product, they could apply to the local implementation for RLA. And if they want to do the math product as a new product this year, they could apply for 1A for CRMSI and so be both in 1A and 1B. However, districts won't be mixing across 1A, 1B, and 1C, so those will be separate.
Thank you, Val. The next question I see is, could we use our IMA money? Yes, IMA, IMTA, whatever the newest acronym is, can be used to purchase materials. Again, that would be a local decision as to how you all get those materials in the CRMSI local implementation or the ESC supports model. If we selected BookNook and Zern through T-Class Decision 2, can we apply for the Amplify materials? I might need a little bit of clarification. Decision 2 is specifically the Tier 1 materials, but if you, through another T-Class decision point, chose those supplemental resources, you would be eligible to apply for the Strong Foundations Implementation Grant. The next question is, if an LEA chooses 1C, does TEA or the LEA pay the ESC for implementation support? That's a great question. Again, these are all in-kind supports. And so the ESC would be directly working with the agency to provide that funding. So you would not be paying for any of the supports. We would offer the in-kind funding to essentially cover the cost of the implementation supports that the ESC would be providing to the district. The planning seems very similar to the development of the framework. Is there a difference? I just want to clarify, so the Strong Foundations Planning Grant is very similar to the Strong Foundations Framework Grant. Yes, those are the same, but the one that we are currently discussing, the implementation supports, is different. This is the actual implementation of the materials after the district has gone through the collective learning series and developed their district instructional framework for math or reading language arts. So yes, the planning grant and the Strong Foundations Framework Grant are very similar. The slide with the information comparing the 3 models, yes, and it will be posted on the website so that you can actually print it off, print it in color, take the time to go through, kind of highlight and have some discussion with the rest of your leadership team around which option may be best. And Val, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that information may already be on the LASO website, correct? The table comparing the 3 models?
I think so.
And the last question I'm currently seeing is, will support continue after the 23-24 after the year 23-24 ends for the following year, or will the LEA be responsible to purchase the materials and resources for Eureka? So if we're specifically asking about the print materials support, currently this grant opportunity is for 1 year and it is only covering the 23-24 school year. There may be future grant opportunities that you will have an opportunity to apply for 24-25 and beyond, but for 23-24, this is a 1-year service. Has the list of vendors been posted? The list of vendors for the Strong Foundations Planning Grant has been posted, but there is not a list of vendors for the Implementation Grant. Again, these are in-kind supports, so we will not be providing funds directly to districts to partner with a vendor. But the Planning Grant has its own set of vendors because that will require you to partner with the vendor to go through your collective learning and engage in developing your framework. And the last question that just popped up is, if we are currently creating our framework, then we will not need to apply for the LASO planning, only the implementation. And that really depends. If you are only focused on one content area, that could be correct, but you may be currently working on your framework for math, and you might want to apply to LASO Strong Foundations Planning for reading language arts. So if you would like to change to do an additional content area, you may continue with the planning process, or you can, of course, apply to implementation support so that you can actually put all of your hard work from the Strong Foundations Framework Grant into action with those materials. See, one more question that just popped up. So if we already have RSSP with T-Class and Strong Foundation and Strong Math Foundation grant, which one do we apply for? I think that depends on what your district leadership team would like to focus on. The RSSP supports, if that is all that you have through T-Class, it may be a conversation with what your district is prioritizing to make the best decision about whether your district is ready to plan or if you are actually ready to implement. So if you're doing the framework grant for, you would have the option to apply for Strong Foundations Planning for reading language arts, or you could apply for Strong Foundations Implementation. But those would be options. It is ultimately the district's decision as to which of the grant opportunities would best serve your district's current needs. Okay, and I know that we have to wrap up pretty shortly so that we can prepare for the next webinar, which is coming on live. But we do want to encourage you all, if you have questions in the next couple of minutes, if you want to continue to drop those in the question and answer box. And again, we will make sure all of these are included in our FAQ document, which we will get posted on the website after we posted our second round. We will have a second opportunity for this webinar. It will be a repeat of this information, so there's no need to attend twice unless you would like to just hear it again, or if you have more questions between now and then. But thank you all for joining us today. Again, we will do our best to get answers to all of your questions and capture them in a very clear manner on our FAQ document, along with the slide deck and recording by the end of the week. And thank you all for joining. Please use the Strong Foundations website and email address if you need any additional support. Have a wonderful day.